Okay, we need to talk about what I just saw at the end of this To Your Eternity episode. This is the craziest moment, I think, today. Marsh has seemingly been revived, and it makes a lot of sense as we know the concept of how the souls can come back. Fushi laid out all of his vessels, all of his bodies, so in a moment's notice he could transform into them, but also so that the knockers couldn't steal his form because they wouldn't be with him, and his soul or anyone's soul wouldn't be in it, so it makes a lot of sense as a defense mechanism. Fushi not knowing that the souls are there, as soon as they come unattached from that robe, if the soul wants to go back in the body, it can do so, and that's exactly what happened with Marsh waking up. Now, the big question is, will Fushi learn about this in the middle of the battle or not, or even after the battle? We don't know. It is going to be very interesting if come this battle he tries to transform to Marsh, he can't, and he's just under the assumption that she was taken by the knockers somehow, and he sees her afterwards, and like the emotional reunion that could pop up there is next level. This entire time, I've been thinking the way he'll find out is when Bond eventually dies, and mainly because Bond's not going to reveal that information right now because Fushi's been pretty emotionally immature, but right now it seems like Fushi's in a lot better headspace, so maybe it can be revealed, and I think Bond's not the type of guy that if the opportunity arose that naturally would reveal itself, he would let it happen. I just think he doesn't think it's the right time for him to do it, and my mind's racing. My mind is absolutely racing, and as I keep saying, this is an incredible season. Now, I do have a full live reaction to today's episode available on my Patreon, so if you want to see that, consider supporting. And I gotta say, that was the most shocked I've ever been, I think, watching an episode. My mouth was hanging open and I didn't know what was going on there. I was just so worried in the moment that her body was gonna decay and like maybe he would lose her form to like a knocker or something. Instead, no, she just wakes up and completely changes the course of this battle. It's going to be very interesting because, I mean, Fushi's at a very interesting stage. We've, over the course of the last few episodes, seen him get closer and closer to being the man in black. I mean, he was phasing through buildings exactly like him, and in this episode, Bond even calls him out and has a conversation with the others. Basically, he says, like, Fushi's my replacement, which makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that he's been a pretty emotionless, very neutral persona in this series. Doesn't really seem like he knows happiness or sadness, but I have to imagine being alive for probably as long as he's been, eventually you probably want to rest. I think it's more of a release, and training Fushi to be that vessel, he could probably solve this battle as he says right now. Doesn't really think about it, doesn't really know for sure, but probably could. He's saying, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but I'm not going to do it because the death promotes his growth, and ultimately, as someone being raised to be his successor, it makes a lot of sense from a logical point of view. Doesn't make him a big douche? Oh, absolutely, but it makes sense from a logical, godlike persona. It's going to be very interesting to see the direction they're going to go because there's an entire possibility that Marsh will never show her face to Fushi. Because here's the thing, and people are going to try to counter me on this. She is a character who, yes, is a child, but she's been traveling with Fushi for how many hundreds of years as a spirit, and she knows Bond's concerns. She knows the general concerns, and she's seen Fushi both emotionally high and emotionally low. If she looks at Fushi as someone who can't comprehend the idea that the spirits are with him and he can bring back these people, I mean, she's going to recognize the world is very brutal. So I'm curious to see if this will indeed be the moment that he learns, or is she going to choose to just navigate on her own path? I don't know. I hope he gets to meet her at the very least, because our boy, he feels so alone. Just prior to them all, or at least most of the city departing, he looked like, please Bond, just go with your family, you know, you don't have to stay here and die with me. Like, he just felt so alone, and then he got encouraged by everyone, and you saw a glimmer of happiness that we haven't seen in a while in this series. So I feel like someone like Marsh would be that rekindling. It would spark that flame once again. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they will or not. At the very least, we know it still works. I mean, we knew it worked, but it's kind of nice having a face that's been dead for hundreds of years come back. And I don't think that's a bait. I don't think anything. I mean, hell, if it was a bait and we come in next episode or whatever and we learn it wasn't actually Marsh, yeah, I might have pie on my face. But I mean, from what we've seen and what we know about the mechanics of this world, I think it's pretty clear what just happened, and I'm very excited to see what they're gonna do. I thought it was kind of brilliant because after last week, I mean, Fushi really thought he was about to be exposed to the church and stuff because everyone think he's a devil, but we saw no one expose his identity. So to see the last building that he builds, which is this castle, right, and to see him just like hover up like a god and how everyone is just in awe, like some are shocked, but none are like fearful. It's such a great character moment for a boy who's been feeling like he's a god among men and felt like he had the answers, but it really was just a child in a lot of ways throwing a temper tantrum because, I mean, Fushi is emotionally immature, but to see the growth of his character, the highs and the lows, it's amazing to see how far he's come, and honestly, that princess moment, really, had they just had a more natural conversation at the start, the princess seems like a genuinely good person, and she seems happy to know Fushi. But Fushi, because he threw a bit of a temper tantrum the first time they met, they just kind of started off on bad terms. But we can see they have a lot more in common than he first realized. And to see that moment with her father, who is just so sickly, so on the deathbed, I think the reason he kind of agreed to go along with the Immortals' plan was simply a mixture of he's going to be dead anyway, and the knockers are coming anyway, so let this boy do whatever. It's not going to change anything. It could change it positively, or if it's negative, it doesn't matter. We have a bunch of armies coming anyway, so let me rest. I'm a little tired. And I thought that was an interesting scene in general. I just think what makes To Your Eternity such a compelling adventure is that each story arc, the different time periods we're in terms of what it does for Fushi's character. The first season being someone who doesn't really know what humanity is and doesn't know what it means to live and lose and how to deal with those emotions. He eventually separates himself for hundreds of years, and then in return we see obviously where we're at now with him kind of feeling like now he's in that teenager phase of being like, you know, season 1 kind of child phase, season 2 more of a teenager phase, young adult phase. And the fact that he kind of was feeling like a god among men, but now he's being corrected, his trajectory is being corrected. And I feel like by the time you reach the end of this show, if things continue to improve for him, rather than him being a replacement for the Man in Black as the Man in Black is, but rather Fushi could actually be a more positive influence for the world and someone who doesn't just sit back and say things have to be a certain way or, you know, death is just a part of it. Yes, death has to be a part of the world, but does death have to be a part of it because, you know, if a life gets cut too soon, he has the ability to bring it back and let them live a full life. There's a lot of interesting ways they could go. And I gotta admit, Season 2, definitely better than Season 1, and Season 1 was a masterpiece in my mind, and I imagine when we get Season 3, I'm gonna be saying the exact same thing. I don't know where we would go after this season, if we would immediately do a time jump or anything like that, but it doesn't change the fact that To Your Eternity is unlike anything I've covered on this channel, and I love it so much. It's always a shame because once you get into the second core of a show, if it's not the biggest show of the season, views start dipping off, discussions start dipping off. But it doesn't change the fact that the people who come back week after week to discuss this masterclass of a series, we know this show is still one of the absolute best we're going to be watching this year. And I mean, this show is popping off, man. It is popping off, and what a twist. But thoughts and feelings yourself down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Ring that bell so you can get as many notifications to the channel as possible, and as I mentioned, full live reaction is available on my Patreon. And while you're there, you'll also get yourself a video shoutout. So today we got Xeno, Yuki, Ali, and ZZ. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.